And good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Sam Nasser, and this is the Cleveland C# user group. A little bit about the group. We meet every month. The meetings are free of charge and open to the public, and we cover a variety of topics related to .NET. You can find meeting information posted on meetup.com at the link listed at the bottom of the slide. As we always do, I'd like to give a big thank you to our sponsors, PostSharp and DevExpress, for sponsoring a couple of free licenses that will be offered using the eval forms, the .NET Foundation for sponsoring the meetup space, and NIS Technologies for sponsoring the virtual meeting space. Also, a special offer from Manning.com, 35% off a selection of books with the discount code MTPCLEC21, and the link will be made available in chat shortly afterwards. Some general information. First and foremost, please keep in mind participation is encouraged. And like I always say, the only stupid question is the one not being asked. So always jump in with a question or a comment. However, when not speaking, kindly ask you to mute your microphone just to avoid any background noise. And we want to keep it casual but organized. So we want to give a chance for our speaker to go through all the slides and the demos, but at the same time, casual enough where you can jump in with a question at any point in time. And lastly, the presentation is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube in just a few short days. So for tonight's feature presentation, we have Michael Eaton presenting building awesome console apps in .NET using Spectre.Console. Michael's a principal consultant for Improving with approximately 30 years of experience. He's been focused on Microsoft solutions most of that time, and you can find a lot of his blog entries at samestuffdifferentday.net, where he blogs about technical as well as leadership articles. And so with that, Michael, welcome to the Cleveland C# user group.
Thanks, Sam. It's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. So a little bit about me, as Sam said. I've been married for 26 years, father to 2 adult kids, both living at home, both having a ton of fun now. I have 3 cats, which I'll get to in a second. I write and I blog, and I'm a principal at Improving, which is just a fantastic company, which I'll talk about here in just a minute. As for the 3 cats, from left to right, that's Moo, V, and Tiny. I didn't want cats. I didn't grow up with cats. That's just the way it was. But my kids wanted cats. And Moo, the one on the far left, picked me. I am his human. V, the one in the middle, my son picked him at the shelter. He picked my wife. And Tiny, the one on the end, is a free agent. He just goes wherever people give him attention. So I do work for Improving. It's a consulting company where we are nationwide. Actually, we're in Canada and in Mexico as well. In Ohio here, we have offices in Cleveland and Columbus. And if you want to hit those QR codes, I can make these slides available to you. The QR codes will just take you to the places where it says our careers. We're hiring just like anyone else is. If you put your stuff in and you're awesome, then that's what we look for. We do a lot of classes, a lot of agile classes and those types of things. And just general, we do consulting, we do services and those types of things. The goal of this session really is to introduce you to Spectre.Console and explore its capabilities. And I will point out here that in the case of Spectre.Console, I am firmly an enthusiast, not an expert. I've used it on a few things. I've blogged about it at least once. It's a cool tool. I have always loved the command line. I spend a lot of time at the command line. I use a lot of console apps. I kind of fell in love with them back when I got started because, back when I started, when you started your computer, it would start at DOS. And you'd be there at a command line saying, what now? And, type open Windows. But I always just kind of loved the look and feel and the elegance of a well-written console app, a command line app. And as much time as I spend in the command line, there are a lot of times I just want to solve a problem. It may not be for a client, may not be for anyone else, but there are times where it just makes sense just to write a console app, just to do a thing that I need it to do. And a lot of what I want to show you here are some examples where that is the case, right? Where here are ways that you could use some of these, some of the functionality of Spectre.Console. So when it comes to console applications, you can get away without ever having used one. For example, if you use Git from Visual Studio, or if you use Git from a tool like SourceTree or Fork or one of those. Same thing with Docker, right? You can do everything from Docker from a user interface, from a GUI. But by and large, as developers, we tend to use Git for some things at the command line. We use Docker Compose Up, those types of things from the command line. If you're doing Azure work, there's an Azure CLI. There's also Azure PowerShell tools, but it's all kind of done within those places. NPM, .NET, .NET.exe. This is how you can do a lot of things. You can build your apps. You can run your apps. Run tests, create new things, all from the .NET command line app. And just to level set here, so a console application runs inside of a terminal, which is kind of a host, and that host runs a shell. So for example, on my Mac, I run Z shell inside of iTerm. On Windows, I run my Z shell inside of a Windows terminal. Sometimes, I'll use git bash if that's what I have, or maybe I'll open up a PowerShell prompt. But those all run within Windows terminal on Windows. And so, if you're on Windows, you start run, especially Windows 11 start run type terminal. There you go. There's your terminal application that you can then do a lot of this stuff in. And I know some of that's basic, but some people just don't ever use command line apps or console apps. So I wanted to level set there a little bit. So for example, my blog, I do everything from the command line. I use a blogging framework called Jekyll. It's Ruby based. Doesn't matter, I don't ever have to write Ruby, but that's what it's written in. So you can see here, this is on Windows. I've split the terminal window in two, so I've got essentially my build running in the left-hand pane, and then the right-hand pane is where I do all my Git stuff. Because all I do with my blog is I edit a page, push it to Git, it builds, and it deploys. So, but that's all kind of done from a terminal. This is a terminal, an active terminal. I could flip and show you right now. This is for a client. So we've got Docker, we've got NPM, we've got another Docker, we've got one where I was running a test, the bottom where all the red in the bottom right-hand corner, and then one that I just use for stuff, right? But again, these are all command line apps that I run. And if this is running and I'm interacting with those Docker containers, or I'm interacting with the web that was, with the website, I'll see obviously status and logs get spit out in those panes. And this is on my Mac, and this is in iTerm 2. And again, I dumbed down my prompt. Normally it has a lot more, but just to make it easier for everyone to see, normally my prompt has, what branch I'm in and all those other things. But so again, I use these types of apps all the time. I'm a fan of Vim, if y'all are familiar with that. So when it comes to .NET and it comes to writing applications, a lot of times you'll see, even if you go to MS Learn and you're going through the C# path, which is really good. For example, Free Code Camp has their free C# certification, and as part of that, you have to go through all the MS Learn paths, and they start with console apps. So they essentially start with Hello World, and that's as easy from the command line as .NET new console, and it'll create a console application for you that does nothing but spit out Hello World. And with the standard console class in .NET, you could do some cool things, but you are also severely limited. So for example, you can do colors, you can change the background color, you can change the foreground color, but anything more complex than that, then you're starting to get into interop and WinAPI stuff, and it's just not worth it. Same thing with, oh, well, here's the code for that. So just so you get an idea. So to do that, this is what the code would look like, right? So you would do something like console background color, console foreground color. But the thing is, once you set that, it stays for the session until you do console.reset color, which can be kind of a pain, and it's a bit tedious. And you can see, as we kind of go down the screen, where I was, if I wanted to do a single letter, right, then I'm going to do a console.write that letter with a certain color, and I'm going to reset the color, or I'm going to change the color. But you really can't get much fancier than that with the standard console class, without going to interop and without, doing API stuff. And same thing with asking for input. So with input, I can ask a question in a console, say, what's your name, or what's your age, or things like that. I can make it as interactive as I need it to be. But this code ends up being kind of ugly, because not only I'm going to do my write lines to say, what's your name, but then console.readLine is going to read a string. So I'm going to read the string and I'm going to do something with it. I'm probably going to need to validate that string to make sure it's legit in some way, right? That, if I'm asking for a name, that you didn't enter all numbers, or if you enter, in this case, I ask for how old are you, but then I have to parse that. Is it an age? Is it legit, right? And I didn't even do much here. I didn't even say, is it greater than 0, right? Like, if in this app right now, I could put -25 and it would work. It'd be like, cool. But if it's not a number, if I ask for the age and I type Mike, then obviously my try parse is going to fail, and it's going to say that's not a number. So you could do things like that, but it gets complicated really quickly if you want to do more. Now, there's no saying that you can't write your own helper methods here, to prompt for certain types of input, to verify, to validate the input. There's all sorts of things you can do yourself. And if you've been writing console apps for a long time, you probably have a library of code that you can access that does a lot of this stuff. The other thing too is that the native console class, if you look at some of the methods, it'll tell you sometimes it will say it's only supported on Windows. So even though this is .NET, even though this is supposedly cross-platform, it may not work on my Mac. It may not work on Linux. So you have to be careful of that. There are some things in the native console class that only work on Windows. I'm not saying Spectre is perfect. I'm not saying it answers all those questions and is perfectly cross-plat, because it's not. But the cool thing with that is it's open source, and you can go in and make a pull request and fix something that may not work on the Mac. Now, I haven't found anything yet, but again, I haven't used this thing. I haven't done super complex things with it. And I guess, to be fair, you could also make a pull request into .NET and fix something there in the console class. But that's something to be aware of, is that not everything is supported everywhere in the console class. So what I showed you were just examples of the standard console class in .NET for outputting data, console.write, console.writeLine, and reading data, console.readLine. You could do read key and those types of things too, but it's relatively limited. And if you want to do anything more complex, you're going to end up writing a lot of code yourself. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. Excuse me. If I just want to create a console app that asks for input and the validation is easy because it's built in, then cool, I want to do that. If I want to output things underlined, can't easily do that with the standard console class. You can't easily strike through. There's just a bunch of things you can't easily do with the standard console class. But Spectre is here, and Spectre is not the only library out there that does this stuff. But it does have 7 million, almost 7 million downloads on NuGet, and it has almost 8,000 stars on GitHub. It's a popular project. It's well maintained. The core maintainer, Patrick, is active in the code base. If you go in and look, you'll see that he makes changes frequently. And so the two websites there, obviously, the one is the documentation. So if you go to Spectre.Console.net documentation, and I'll flip over there in a second, and we'll kind of walk through what's there. And then the next one is the GitHub repo. And now this is licensed with an MIT license, which is pretty cool. Makes your life easier if you want to include this in your own projects. So I'm going to flip over and let's look at the repo for a second. So, okay. So the repo, you can see here, I mean, there were changes made last week, and Patrick is the core maintainer. There are other people that help. If you look at the contributors, so almost 100 contributors, which is kind of cool. But all the code is here, and this README right here gives you a good overview of, hey, look at all the cool stuff you can do. And we'll dive into some of this. Talks about installing, which again, we'll talk about here. The one cool thing is that it comes with plenty of samples. If you pull the code, it comes with samples to cover everything. And they made it really easy to get to those examples. So I'm going to flip to my console right here. Okay, can everyone see that okay?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. So I'm in the Spectre.Console, the repo. I cloned it, right? And if I follow those instructions that were on that page of installing this global tool to show the example, I can say .NET example --select. Now, --select is kind of cool because this also uses itself. It uses Spectre, right? And you can see I'm kind of scrolling down at the bottom of my screen through the list of samples. And if I picked one, let's pick Figlet, and I hit enter, it's going to build that sample and it's going to run it for me, which is really kind of cool. So the demos I'm going to show, I'm trying to stay away from, like, I didn't just copy and paste those demos, right? Because they're there for you to see, and you can spend a lot of time poking around. It's taking a while to build. It should work. I ran these earlier. There we go. So now it's running, and it's gonna spew out the Figlet here in a second. There we go. Okay, so there you go. So that took a while to get that demo out, but this is one of the components that you can use. Now, I did show you that you could do this --select, but if I just say .NET example, it's going to come up in a much different presentation. And this way, now you can see, hey, here's everything, and you can kind of see what they are. So if I wanted to run a specific one, I could say .NET example. Let's do progress, and I'll hit enter. And it's going to do the same thing. You can see it's actually using the status component. It's going to build progress, and it's going to run it, which is really kind of cool. I mean, this is just a clever way to have sample code available that you can look at. And obviously, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I got a question. So I noticed that as your mouse went over some of these examples, are those hyperlinks?
They are not. That's just underlined text.
Okay.
And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that as we go, because I do have something for that. But so you can see this is the progress component. But you can also see, look, it's showing an emoji. It's just doing some cool stuff here, right? So that's a good way. And honestly, you can, if you want to I already have code running. I'm not sure. Let's see. Let me do this. GitHub, Spectre.Console, open. Okay, and so if you look at examples here, I'm not sure what's slowing everything down here, but here we go. So if you click into the examples console folder, now you can see, let's look at minimal and program.cs, and there you can see, and we're going to get into some of this stuff here in just a second, but then you can see the example, and you can run this yourself, and you can copy and paste this yourself, anything like that. But the oops. So there's that. So I'd recommend, if you want to start playing, I'd grab the code. I would grab the code, install this global tool, and then be able to run those samples when you want, because there's a lot there. I'm going to cover some, and then some of it you guys can take a look at. So the other website is the documentation, and the documentation is pretty good. Like, there's a lot of stuff here. There's the whole quick start of how do you add the package to just like your basic program here, your basic hello world. But it goes through and looks at each one of the essentially the widgets, the components that you can use. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that this is not meant to build like highly interactive applications. There are other ones, other frameworks out there for that. This is meant more for displaying static data, displaying statuses that are coming out of different programs. Sure, you can do input, you can do those types of things, but this isn't going to be one that's going to be this window you can have up. You could tab between fields and have users enter and that kind of stuff. It's not going to be that. This is really going to be a lot of static content that you're going to display. But there's a ton of stuff you can do. So check out the documentation. Again, there's a lot here. It gives you some best practices for things to do and not do. And, it even says here, if you test on Windows, built-in Command XE in Windows Terminal, they will behave differently. And in fact, you have to do extra work to get things to run in Command XE to enable Unicode, I believe is the thing you have to do. But it's all here for you to look at. What is this? It's the Windows terminal you have to configure for Unicode support. So they tell you how to do that. And again, if you do anything in command line, you've probably already done that before, just because it's an important thing to do. So back over to the slide. So that's the repo and the documentation site. So the repository, lots of good stuff. Look at the examples. Submit PRs if you find issues either in the documentation or in the code itself. And this is just showing. Oh, and I forgot to delete that to the slide, and I forgot to delete a block. But this is just showing that, right? So install that. So when it finally comes time to use it, there's different packages you're going to install for different needs. So the base one is just Spectre.Console, and that's going to give you the majority of the widgets, those things that we just kind of looked at, and we're going to look at in more detail. Console.CLI. I'm not doing too much in this demo tonight with this, but that is what allows you to. So if you use get it to command line, right? You do, git checkout or git clone. You might do a git clone and then give it the URL, right? So the CLI allows you to essentially do argument handling for your application without parsing args yourself, right? If you create a new console app, you're going to see, well, that's something else. If you create a console application that actually has a main method, you'll see a string array args. You have to parse that yourself. With the CLI, there's a way that you can write a class that will parse that and kind of enforce requirements and those types of things. JSON is if you're going to do any JSON processing, and I am going to do that in a couple of the demos. And then image sharp is the other package you would install if you want to show images. Now, the images are, if you want to see super pixelated images, this is the way to do it, right? Because that's what it's going to look like. It's going to look like 8-bit stuff from the early 90s. It's going to look pretty terrible. Now, if you make it really big and everything, sure, it'll look better. But like I tried to do my profile pic. That's what it was, and it was a blob of nothing. You couldn't tell what it was. And I'll show you where I did improving his logo in one of the demos, and you'll see kind of what I'm talking about. And we could play with the code a little bit and resize it, and you could say, oh, I recognize improving's logo down to that's just a blue blob of nothing. So those are the different packages that you'll install. But with Spectre, you can do all that I showed you with the standard console class and so much more in so much less code. Now, less code for you to write, not less code overall, because it's all packaged in the library, right? And so you don't have to, it's code you don't have to write, which is cool. So, but you can do the same stuff. You can have colors, you can have foreground colors, background colors. You can get fancy, right? You can see where I did the words and I did each character. Now, I could have done each character using standard console class, but it was ugly. And it was just too much code. So I started to do it and then I reverted it. I did like 2 characters and then but this is much cooler. But here you can also bold, you can underline, you can create clickable links, right? And I'll flip out. This is a little animation because I wanted to make sure, again, if a demo failed, I wanted to make sure you could see all the output. But I will show you what a clickable link looks like. But this one is, you can make things blink. And I hope that comes through in the video or streaming, because who doesn't like blinking text? I mean, come on, that's just awesome. And you can do slow blink, you can do fast blink, so different things like that. But the clickable link is actually really cool. And let's do this. Let me flip out here to. I'm actually just gonna hijack this little demo right here, right? And what I'm gonna do is show you what that looks like. So I'm going to say, I'll have global usings is already there. So I'm going to say ANSI console markup, and I'm going to say link. Okay. And that should do it. So now let me do this. Let me open up a terminal. I closed all the extra stuff in the machine. This is really weird why, like, little things like this. Okay, so there it is. Not sure why that % sign is there, but you can see I can float my mouse over it. Hey, look, there it is. And if I click it, guess what? I can open up, I'm not sure what browser. Oh, it's going to open it up in Arc. So let me find Arc, other screen. Arc, right there. So there you go. So you can have, yes, clickable links from a console app kind of cool. You know, overall practicality of that, I don't know. It's kind of cool, and I, you know, I don't know what else to say about that other than yes, you can make clickable links. So, but again, you can do like underlining with the standard console class. You have to go to interop in the API. Like there's really no other option there, and that's a lot of ugly code that you know. This is easy, and the way you do that. So let me. So the way you do that, you can see this is much less code. Now I did break things into separate lines here, but you can see here to do the hello world but in color, I use square brackets, and I say color on color, so foreground on background, and I say hello world but in color, and then I have to close the tag. It's a square bracket with a /. And this is heavily influenced by BB code, and I'll show you. I'll go to a link here in a second that shows you kind of what BB code is if you're not familiar. But it's heavily influenced by that. But you can see that as I go down, I don't need to reset any colors. I don't need to do anything. Everything is kind of on that line that I'm doing. So when I have, you know, red U, and I close, that means U in that sentence is going to be red, and then green can get fancy and change individual. And then, now, yes, this is ugly, where I did every single character a different color. And I will tell you the colors that you have available in this are much richer than the colors you have in the console class. Like if you go and look at console colors dot console.console colors dot, you'll see there's not a lot there. In this, you have a bunch. And in fact, back on the documentation, there is a link that shows you all the colors. And you can use hex, you can use RGB, or you can use the name. And so there's a lot of different colors here that you can use, which is really kind of cool. Now, some of them I look at and go, I don't quite see the difference between some of these, but as you can see, there's just a lot there. And so that's all you have to do is, again, that BB code markup, BB code like markup to do that. Same thing with bold. I use the square brackets and I say bold, and then the word I want bolded. Underline, same thing. Strike through, same thing. And then blink, it's a blink tag. We have a blink tag back. That's awesome. And again, there are different blink tags, right? There's a slow blink. Again, if you go back to the documentation under styles will tell you slow blink, rapid blink. You know, here you can do italics. I haven't quite understood conceal, why you would hide the text and you wouldn't just not print it. So that's an interesting one that I have not experimented with too much. But you can also invert the colors. And I'd be very careful about dimming things, only because like my console right now that I have, normally this is not, I don't normally do the dark background. I've gotten used to using a lighter background for my console. And depending on the colors you use, they might be washed out, they might not show up. But on the black background, everything pops and everything looks really good. In fact, if we do one of their examples, which is colors, this is going to kind of do a loop and it's going to iterate through and it's going to kind of spit them all out on the screen so you can see them, which is just kind of cool. So we'll give this just a second to build and run. Any questions so far? Oh, wow, I see chat going on. Did I missed anything, Sam?
Yeah, there's a couple questions in chat.
Yeah, the most 90s HTML tag for sure. Can you position the cursor within the console prior to printing? Yes. Can you use the link to jump elsewhere in the app to show different content? I don't think that would work. I haven't tried. I don't think that would work. But here you go. You can see with the colors, right? There's 3-bit, 4-bit, 8-bit, and then 24-bit colors. So you can do some really interesting things here with colors on the console. And if you were to, again, do the same thing with the colors that were kind of built into the console colors class, not nearly as many. So this is neat. And you can see, so if you compared the code between what I did with the standard console class and this, there's just much less of it because I'm not having to set foreground, set background, reset when I'm done. In this case, I just say, here's the color I want, and then in the next line, it'll either be back to the default colors or it will be the color you specify. I will show an image in a little bit. Licensing is MIT. And can you combine console and graphics in the same window? Can you explain, like, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? Console and graphics in the same window. I'm assuming.
What I meant was, like, you could. I'm thinking of the old 8-bit days where you could take a portion of your console and split it out and display graphics in one area. And granted, they may have just been cheating and using bitmapped characters instead of the console.
Yeah, you can certainly do. You could certainly use the. I forget what the class is called. Give me 1 second. The class is the so there's two. There's the canvas, which is where you can just draw pixels, right? And then there's the canvas image. And this is what I was saying earlier, and I'll show this live, but this is what I was talking about. Like, I can't really tell that's a piece of cake. I don't even know what that is. So this is kind of the quality you're going to get. Now, I'm sure that
so
PNG
kind of like
file,
ANSI art.
Yes, 100%. Now, the cool thing is you can do things, you can manipulate it, you can rotate, and you can grayscale and that kind of stuff. So there's things you can do. I'm just trying to figure out, like, they would have to already be low-res images. They would, to me, they would already have to be like simple images. Like yesterday, I was I didn't do it, but I'll show you the example where I was working on it and I couldn't quite pull it off where it looked good, so I didn't put it in, which was grabbing weather-related icons. So to show you that it's partly cloudy, but when I showed it on the screen, it was like, I can't even tell you what that is. I don't know what that means. Now, if it was sunny and it was just a yellow circle, you would have known what it was. But unfortunately, with some images, it just looks too bad. So, like I said, markup is influenced by this thing called BB code. And if I go back out to my browser, there it is. Nope, did I not keep that? All right, give me 1 second. Wikipedia has an article for everything. So, I don't know how many of you got your start in bulletin boards back in the day. I did. And this was just a way to kind of decorate text in some forum software. And so they just kind of took that same kind of thing. And again, it's very HTML-like, right? But so the BB code, there were other things you could do, and there the syntax is different, and there are things that Spectre doesn't support, but it's influenced by this. So if you wonder, like, why do they use, all these square brackets and things like that, that's why. Okay, so Spectre.Console. Let's go out. I love Trade Wars. Well, actually, one that I like to play was Legend of the Red Dragon. Was a door game I always like to play. I was a co-system operator with BBS for a few years. Loved that world. Fun times. So let's look at a couple of things here. So if I wanted to show you, let me see, what did I put it in here as? If I wanted to show you a, find it right, I think I lost a code window. Yeah, I think I lost a code window. I think when I did, because I opened that folder. So let's do this. Let's open a new folder. And let's close this folder. And I want this. So bear with me for a second here. This is a touch ugly, but I wanted a quick way to run through some of these. So this is the code that generated most of what you saw in the slide. So if I do this, if I find the console where I was here, expand this, and I say .NET run. Actually, .NET run. Now, I don't know if you knew this. If you're running a .NET console app and you want to pass arguments into it, you can say .NET run -- and then the arguments that you normally feed in, or you could just run the compiled version. I'm just going to run this. It'll build it if it needs to. So I want to look at if I do basic, right? So this is the basic stuff that we looked at in the first couple of slides. There you go. So, but this goes a little deeper. So this is everything I did, but this is where, using the standard console class, I could prompt for my name, prompt for an age. You see I put in a bogus age there. Notice the exception here, right? So it's just this gray kind of, well, not even gray, this white on black exception. One of the cool things is Spectre comes with a way to make your exceptions look better. So I'm going to run the Spectre, and this is going to run through kind of all the things, right? This is going to do kind of all the things in color, and it's going to ask me for my name. And what I want to point out here, and we haven't looked at the specifics here yet, but when we looked at the basic console class, and I was doing input, right? I was saying string name equals console.readline, and then I would get that in, and I would have to do something with it. Well, Spectre has some really cool helper methods. One of them is .ask, one of them is .prompt, one of them is .confirm, and those are actually strongly typed, which is kind of cool. They're generic, so you can tell, hey, I want this to be a string, or I want this to be an int, or I want this to be. So the other thing you can do is you can also provide a default value on these, like when you do an ask. And I'll show you what that looks like here in a second in the code. But so in this case, what's your name? I'm just defaulting it to Michael. So if I just hit enter here, it's going to accept that. And now, when it comes to how old I am, right? So I'm just gonna put something in, and that's cool. But I want to be able to add some validation. And so when it comes to age, right? This should honestly be, what I have here is you have to be between 16 and 123, and you'll see why in a second. So I did Advent blog post last year, and I'll just flip over to that for a second. I did this Advent blog post last year for calculating your heart rate using C# and Spectre.Console. And one of the things, right, so here's that that's syntax. So I can say ANSI console.ask, because instead of console, now we're using Spectre's ANSI console. And we're going to say .ask, and we're going to say I want this to be a number, an int. And that's great. And what it's going to do is make sure that what you entered is an int. So if I try to type in a string, it's going to kick it back and say, hold up, that's not an int. So if I go back over here for this one and I type in 10, you can see that's not a valid age, okay, because it's a string. If I say 125, it's going to say, oh wait, you must be older than the oldest person on record, which is why I picked 123. But you can see it keeps prompting me, right? So it's not like I'm having to write this loop that says, oh, is this legit? If it's not, I'm going to reprompt. I'm letting Spectre handle all of that. So if I say 1, it's still going to say, wait a second, you need to be at least 16, because in that heart rate, the heart rate article that I wrote, that's what I wanted to do, because basically you should be someone who's old enough that they're working out, or so I didn't want it to be a 2-year-old wanting to know what their ideal heart rate should be. That made no sense. So that's why I did this. So then I can say, if I put in my actual age, then it's good to go. Okay. Now the next thing we see here at the bottom is, then it says, are you sure you entered the correct age? And it has this yes or no. Now this is the .confirm method of ANSI console, which is kind of neat. So basically it's only going to look for yes or a no. I can have a default value. You can see the default value there is yes. So if I just hit enter, it's going to say, yep, you entered the right age. If I type in no, it's going to give me a message. In this case, oops. Okay. I can see we had all this other stuff, and I wrote out some emojis, but this is what I wanted to show you. So this is using Spectre's .write exception method, and you can see it's nice and colorful. It's easy to read. You can pick out what the error is. You can kind of pick out where it happened, what file it occurred in, instead of just like the default, whatever your default colors are, white on black. For that exception, you can see it's nice. You can customize that too. You can customize each element to say, I want the exception, the actual exception. So in this case, argument null exception. I want the exception to be this color. I want the line number to be this color. I want the class to be this color. So you can customize that. But it's just kind of neat that you can get this nice and not formatted, but nice and colorful. So you can, if there is an exception, your eye is going to catch it earlier. So if you have something, so if we go back to remember my work stuff here, right? So you can see, oops, this is the output from a test runner, and it's all red. But if I could run this through having it do a .write exception from Spectre, I could have that not just be this red blob of text. I could have it be a little easier to read, a little easier to find the things that were wrong, which makes it nice. So that code, if I look at what that looks like, and that's really just .write exception. And like I said, you can customize it all you want, but I think the default actually looks pretty good. So, and when we look at what the confirm look like, right? So this is just if confirm, and it defaults. It basically the default is yes. You can override that to say it's not. But that's what that looks like. So when I did the age validation, that's what that is. So you basically say, here's the validation error message. Here's the actual validation I want to do. In this case, I'm saying, if the age is less than 16, I'm going to error. If it's greater than 123, I'm going to error. Otherwise, I'm going to say the validation result was a success, and I'm going to let it go through. So that's code I didn't have to write. Yes, I had to set up the validator, but I didn't have to do some weird, let me see if I have, what do I have? yeah, I'm not having to do this kind of weird stuff, right? Try to parse it, make sure it's an int number 1, and then a bunch of code to say, well, wait a second, you know, is it less than this, less than or equal to this? Is it greater than or equal to that? I wasn't having to do that. I could do it in a nice, fluent way, right on the text prompt, which is what that was, and it just makes it easy. So that's a prompt. There's an ask, right? They do roughly the same kinds of things, but it's, again, these are convenience methods. And then, yeah, so there's the name, there's the ask for the name. You can see where I can provide that default value. So it just, again, this is all convenience. It's code I don't have to write. It's there, it's well done. And you can actually get pretty complex with how you do some of these validations and how you do some of these prompts and things. So I did want to show you that. So there's your old ugly, like, hey, that's the error or the exception if I just do a console.write exception. And there it is. Same content, but I think the one that's all Spectre-ified looks a lot better than the one that's not. So this is a table. And what I did, and this is one of the examples I can't just push to GitHub only because it uses a key for a service. And so, but I will show you what this looks like. So what I do is I'm basically iterating over a list of zip codes, and I'm fetching the real-time weather for those zip codes. And then I put them in a table, a Spectre.Console table. And setting up a table is easy, right? It's just a new table. You add columns, and then you add a row with your data to the column, right? It's that easy. And this is kind of the gist of the code. And you can see here, I actually use the status. So show a little spinner. So let me flip out to that and show you what that looks like running. Not that one. This. Sorry, I was making sure it's in the right place. Right. So you can see it's the little status that wasn't up for long, and this is a real call. This is a live call that's hitting the internet. It's super fast. So if I do that again, if you notice, there's just a little spinner that will show up as it's going out and fetching, getting weather data, and then boom, there it is. And I mean, these are the zip codes I picked. But if I go back to here, so there, I just did this, right? So you can see originally I was asking for a single zip code as a prompt, and then I thought, you know what, I want to do more than one. I want to be able to fetch a bunch. And so I decided I'm just throwing them in an array right now. What I could do is I could actually prompt for, I could keep asking, what's, you know, give me a zip code, give me another zip code, give me another zip code, ask, and add those to the list myself, and then run through. Anyone have a zip code I should add to this, just so you can see that this is actually going out and hitting live data? I don't know what 60601 is. Copilot wants me to
44022.
44022, and I see a couple. So let's just add 44857 and 44718. And let's see one more, 44123. Last one, 44236. And the cool thing about this is this might let it, you might be able to see that spinner up just a little bit longer this time. So you can see right now I've got Reynoldsburg, which is where I'm at. It's a suburb of Columbus. I've got Groveport, suburb of Columbus, Cleveland, LA County, and Detroit. So let's Let's see what happens here. As long as those are all legit zip codes. And this is just using open weather data, openweathermap.org. Yes, forgive my warnings again. There you go. So what did I add? I added Moreland Hills, Norwalk, Jackson Township, Euclid, and Hudson. So if you want to look at your phones and look at your weather apps and tell me if that, see if those are correct. But and so this is where in this description you can see clear sky, overcast clouds. This API actually returns the icon you should use. And so I was actually fetching the icon and I was going to display it, but I couldn't do it to where you would even be able to tell really what it was. And maybe that just needed to be me kind of playing a little bit more with the options for the image canvas. But so there's that, and you know, this to me is one of those things where this is handy, right? And I could change it back to just that prompt. So if I was sitting here and I didn't want to pick up my phone and I'm already at a console, I could put this in my path and just be like, tell me what the weather is today. And the cool thing is that the API actually returns like way too much data. I actually have to exclude a bunch. The API, the open weather map API is really cool if y'all get a chance to play with it. Open weather map. It can cost, but I think the one I picked, which was this, which was the was like this one call API. I get like a silly amount of calls per day. But you could see here in this API, if I looked at just the an example API response, has hourly, has daily, has alerts. So there's just a bunch of stuff that I didn't include. But this is just an example of something you might be able to do, right? If you're at work and you have the app and you want to hit, one of my last jobs, what I did is I actually was tired of going to Azure DevOps every day and surfing through 2 or 3 different places to look for data. So I actually wrote a console app using the Azure DevOps API and had it bring back, like, show me all the open pull requests across these 3 repositories. Show me all the open issues across, you know, or all the stories in progress across these 2 boards. I did things like that. And so this was just a good example of, you know, at the console, hitting an API and having it come back and using something like Spectre.Console to give me the data in a nice format. And so that's one of those, what I call just more realistic sample. Now, the other thing too, I don't know how many times I've done it. I've done it more times than I want to count. The number of times I wanted to separate things on the screen in a console app, and I've done something like this, right? And I've kind of counted the dashes. Now I know there's ways you could just repeat a character, right? I get that, but sometimes you just want quick and dirty, and I've done this so many times to separate things as I'm outputting it, versus look what Spectre gives you, this rule. You can justify the text, you can do it left, you can do it right. By default, it's centered. Like, again, it's just a convenience thing. If I want to be able to output things, especially, let's say I'm not the consumer of this app. Let's say I have a more advanced user, but they want to run some job to do something, and I can give them output. I can break the output up and say, okay, here's this segment of output with a rule, here's this segment of output with a rule, and those types of things. So again, just convenient stuff. Now, here's another one. Is there a column equivalent of rule to print a vertical line? You can build tables. You can certainly build tables. You can see even here with the calendar, right? So you could do things like that. You could build a one line or a 1 row table if you wanted to have things kind of separated. But I think what you're getting at is maybe a output, and then here's output on the left, here's output on the right, and have it split with a line. There's probably a way to do that. I'm not sure off the top of my head. But this is another one where, you know, just another one that I like solving my own problems. right? And again, I'm at the command line so often that it's just second nature just to be like, I don't want to have to switch screens. So this one, what I built is I have a JSON file of events, and this JSON file goes through all next year. It goes from this year, from this month until all next year. And what I wanted to do is show the calendar, and you'll see how easy this is. The calendar is just another component that I could drop in, and I could tweak the look and the feel and the border and all sorts of stuff here. And I can show the events. Now these events aren't clickable. There's nothing I can do here. It just simply indicates, hey, there's something special going on here. So you would almost have to build, like, here's the calendar, here's the events highlighted, and then something in a spot next to it to show, okay, here's the details. On the 21st was this thing, and the 31st is Halloween. And then I use this, what is this called? I forget what this is called. I'll tell you in a second. That is a breakdown chart, because here's the code for that. So I'll show you the JSON here in a minute, because I've got some other things I do with it. But I have this JSON file, important dates. And again, this could be read from an API. It doesn't have to be read from a static file. But I import it. I create this new breakdown chart, and I give it a width. Now you'll see here, this is expanded in the slide. But I could have it go the full width of the screen, or I could constrain it to a certain width. And in this case, I did constrain it to a certain width. And then I go through that JSON file, and I kind of group and I count. And then I add the items to that breakdown chart. And the reason I have them broken out is because I want different things to be different colors. So in that breakdown chart, we have green, blue, and red, right? So you can see that's where I did the breakdown here. So holidays are red, celebrations are green, deadlines are blue. Now, I will tell you that data. I asked GitHub Copilot chat. I said, generate me a JSON file with all the holidays from today until the end of 2024, and include the date, the name, and the type of event. And so it's the way it picked holiday, celebration, and deadline. But I had that. If you guys haven't used Copilot chat, it's kind of cool. I've just started to dive in. For things like that, it was super easy to do. But I'll show you what that JSON file looks like. So let's go here. Here is what it looks like. So I gave it the title, like important dates, because you never know. Like I said, this could be coming from an API call, could be coming from anything. And so I have all the different things in here. And then what I did is for that one, where is chart calendar? Yeah. So to add the calendar, it's just a new calendar. And now I specify, I made the calendar, I set it to this year, this month. So it's flexible. I could do, in fact, I could do right now, I could say, let's see, let's do var year equals ANSI console.ask, right, let Copilot finish it, and then var month equals ANSI console. See, isn't that cool? I'm sorry, I never thought I would like having something write code for me like that, but it just hits it so many times. I'm like, it's just right. Let's see, so I could do this, say year, month, okay? And now because my important dates, so if I say 2023 12, then it should show me New Year's. If I say April of next year, I should see April Fool's Day, tax day, right? Now I just made that change live, so if it doesn't work first time, bear with me for a second. Take this one, and this is going to be chart. So we got to let this build, and again, see my warnings. And okay, what year do you want to see? So let's do 2024. And what month do you want to see? 4. And there you go. You can see now it's showing April of 2024. See April Fool's Day and Tax Day, right? Which I believe were the 2 events, April Fool's Day and Tax Day. So, you know, again, it's something I can see tweaking this a little bit more and, you know, making it a little more usable. Again, showing maybe off to the side, here's the actual what's happening on those days instead of just having like, what is the 1st of April? I don't know. But you remember this chart up here, this is showing the breakdown in that file. So I did a group by using link of the data in the JSON file and filled this in just as another example of how to use one of these controls. Because you could do this if you were reading from a directory, right? And you wanted to see, okay, what's the, you know, graphically show me how many PDFs versus zip files, or look at your download folder, right? How many PDFs versus zip files versus XEs, and this would kind of show you proportionally like what you had of those files. So I think that's kind of cool. And again, there's the calendar and the yellow bold. That's just what I decided to pick, so it's good against the black screen. And it's easy to add events to the calendar. And you'll see everything is, all these controls are roughly the same, right? You create the thing, so in this case a calendar, or that, I keep forgetting the name of it, the breakdown chart. I create the breakdown chart, and then I just do an ANSI console.write that thing, and then it spits it out. I wanted to show you a couple more things that I think are kind of neat, and I just forget what I named the demo in the code. So bear with me just for a second. I think it's, yep. So one of the controls they have in here too that you can use, this is going to fail, so I just realized I left off a parameter. Yep. And you can see here, I'm not outputting this exception and using the right exception. But if I wanted to see, like, how many times have you had a JSON file on your drive? You know, I don't know what this JSON file is. And if you're on Windows, you type JSON file, or on the Mac, you might cat the file to see what's in it. Now I've got let me show you that first. So I've got an enhanced cat on my Mac. If I do cat short sample.json, you can see it looks kind of nice. On Windows, if I did type, it might not look as nice. It certainly wouldn't be color coded, all those things. But there's a component in Spectre that lets you render JSON in a pretty nice way. You can see I'm doing a little loading, I'm doing a little spinner, but there you go. And again, you can control what the output looks like, how tokens are colored, and those types of things. And the cool thing is this will do, okay, so this doesn't have, and this is what I was saying earlier, Eli, this is for static stuff. There are other libraries that will give you the kind of interactivity you're looking for, right? Like that Norton Explorer. I'll show you that. I'll jump to GitHub and I'll show you which one I'm talking about. And I'll probably end up doing a talk or an article on that one too, because I think that those are the kind of apps I used to write. The mouse-driven, and I did them in Quick Basic of all things, and then a little bit with Visual Basic with DOS 1.0, which was the only 0.0. But the cool thing is here is I could pick a I've got a big JSON file in here. I think it's just sample. I've got this big JSON file, and it'll handle it just fine. Now, you might think it's taking a long time to load that file. I'm doing a couple of thread.sleeps in there, just so you can see the spinner a little bit longer. But you can see here, and this is that weather data I was telling you about. Like, it rendered this whole file. And I just want to make sure, let me just make sure I'm not, yeah. So in the file itself, I just want to point this out. It's not formatted in the file. So it's not like this component is just spitting out a nicely pre-formatted JSON file. No, this is a big blob of how big is this thing? This thing's huge. Oops, where is that one? This is 20,000 characters, right? It's a big file, but it's not formatted. And you can see that this viewer, this JSON component in Spectre, just did it, and it did it right, and it did it fast. Yeah, so the spinner, let me show you what this looks like. This was, where did we go? I lost my code again. Here we go. So this, you can see that's a status. So I do ANSI console.status. I indicate the kind of spinner I want it to be. Now that was a star, but there are some other ones. You can do bouncing balls. You can do, let's see what Christmas is, even though I know it's still only not even Halloween yet, but let's run this and see what the Christmas looks like for a spinner. And build again. There you go. See the Christmas tree with the lights flashing? That's pretty cool. So there's lots of different spinners you can do. You can see I did a couple of thread sleeps because again, I wanted it to be up there just a little bit longer. And all I did was just file.read all text. So that took approximately 0.002 seconds to load, but I blew it up a little bit. And then it's a JSON text widget, component, whatever you want to call it. And then I just do an ANSI console.write of that JSON, and there it is. And I can do, I think I have one other, I have short sample, and important dates. So let's just do the important dates one, just so we can see. Okay, we'll see the Christmas tree again, which I think is really kind of neat. And you can customize those. You can build your own spinners, which is neat. One of the examples I give in the docs is building a spinner that will, the three states are, it'll show you like A, B, C, and then I'll go back through A, B, C. I think that's kind of neat. So you can build your own, do anything you want with them. How are we doing on time, Sam?
We're doing pretty good, but you can use as much time as you need.
Okay. Well, I'm almost done. Let's see, and I'll certainly take questions here. Okay. Yep. So here we go. Key takeaways. Spectre.Console, easy to install, easy to use. It's mostly cross-platform. I'm not going to guarantee you that every single thing that you try will work exactly the same between Linux and Windows and Mac. You have to test. I was going to try to do this in the flip between two machines, but that would have been more trouble than it was worth. But you can see everything rendered really well on the Mac. But to be fair, some of these I should try some of these on Command-XE, on Terminal, on those types of things and see how they come out. Has a rich set of easy-to-use components. You saw them all. If you go to the docs, lots of stuff there. And the things I didn't cover, which I think are compelling, are the selection and multi-selection. So you saw the selection when I looked at the samples, right? Where here's this list of samples, you can use your arrow keys to go up and down and pick a sample. I think that's a compelling one. The multi-selection is another compelling component. I could see using that. What I want to do for the weather one, right? Think of this. Think if you had the weather, and let's say you had a JSON file or a database, I don't care where, and you had your list of cities and zip codes, and which you wanted to pick. And so you could display it in this multi-select and say, okay, I want to see Detroit, I want to see Cleveland, I want to see Louisville out of a list of 20 cities. You could multi-select and then say, here's the ones I want to use, go. I think that's a really compelling one. The layout is another one where you can do more complex layouts, but again, this is display. This isn't like you're going to be able to have controls in that bottom section that you can tab over to. So this is really just, so think of the weather app, of the one that showed the weather, right? What I could do is I could have the table of stuff, or I could show, my current city here, have a table of here's the next 7 days, and I could have an image in the top, right? But it's going to be all static, and I think that's something that you need to be just aware of as you go. The text path, I think, is a cool one too, right? Like if you want to display a path, but it's too long, this will do the right thing and kind of truncate it the right way, which I think is neat. I didn't touch the CLI portion of it, but this is really where you could do things like, think of get checkout dash B, get checkout dash. You know what get checkout dash does? Takes you to the last branch you were in. But you could do things like that. You could have these really complex scenarios of different arguments and options. I worked on a commercial installer, an installer for a commercial product before, and we didn't use a library to do all of this stuff. We kind of had to build it all ourselves, but we had to do options of, dash server. And think of anything you do with if you use the Azure command line interface, right? Just say az create blah, and then you give it your resource group, right? You give it the location, those types of things. That's where you can build out those types of applications where you can say, here's the option, here's the argument, those types of things. And this is really rich. This does a lot of really cool stuff. You can even specify which of the arguments are required versus which of the arguments are optional. So again, that's a compelling one. And then back up to the other ones. I think tree is a compelling one too. And I could see things like this of like if I wanted to see, I don't know if you guys, does the Mac even have something like this? Yeah. So this is a Mac app. But if you remember back in, I had a tree command in DOS back in the days, and it would show me what the structure of the current directory was. But you could build something like that easily in Spectre. So I did promise I was going to show you another one that I think is as compelling as Spectre. And bear with me for a second here as I try to remember the name right here. So this is, I think, more what you're talking about, right? The Windows, the mouse driven, right? This is super compelling as well. Like this would be building an app, like a user application from that would run in the console, right? And these are the kinds of apps I used to build back in the day with Quick Basic and VB for DOS and that kind of stuff. So this is one to look at too, terminal.gui on GitHub. So I think that was someone's question earlier. And this, you could have the fields and you tab between them and those types of things. So buttons. Yeah, so there it is, 723. Any questions, comments, thoughts?
I thought it was pretty interesting, and it's nice with the quick start. It seems like you can get going very easily. Just a couple commands and you're off and running.
Yeah, for sure. They definitely make it easy. In fact, I watched a YouTube video from the guy Patrick, the author. Now he did so. I started to do the same thing even before I saw his talk. I was going to build out the entire slide deck in Spectre, right? And I got so far. In fact, let me just jump over and see if I can get to that one real quick. If I can't, I will. That's one I will probably post about somewhere because it was just a fun thing to do. Oh yeah, here it is. So let me do this. Let me. I have two mains in this, so because I was just playing. Okay, so this is just it uses Spectre.Console, and what I do is I have a loop set up to where it detects the arrow keys to scroll between screens, and then I have the screen set up to just kind of write out the stuff. So let me. Which one is this? This is original demo, I believe. So I'll show you what this looks like real quick. And, okay. You'll see an image in this one. Okay, so there's the Figlet, right? So this would have been the opening slide and this kind of stuff. And now I can use my left and right arrow keys, and I can go to the next one. So there's an example of an image, right? That looks pretty terrible. That's a high quality PNG that looks like garbage. And I've resized it, and if I try to make it smaller, it looks terrible. But I just wanted to show you that's what an image looks like. So this is another one, right? There's a frame. I was going to show calendars here. Here's the placeholder, right? And I have this set up where I can't go any further, but I can go back. So again, I just wanted to be able to show all the, but it was going to get, and I could escape to quit, but it was going to get too much to do all the other things I wanted to do. So thanks so much. Let's see, do a business support changing font size in addition to style. So I will tell you that the one demo I had, this one, where I was showing the JSON files. So this one I actually did have to go into my shell, and I set my buffer to unlimited. Can Spectre control that stuff? I don't believe so. As for font size, I think all that is left up to you in your console configuration. I don't think you can override any of the sizes. So I think you're kind of stuck with whatever you have. Now, I will tell you on my console, because I'm getting old, my eyes are bad. Let's look at this. I have my text is set to 14. And then I'll show you what I normally use. I normally use, not that one, maybe that one, it's gonna spin. I normally use a much lighter theme too. But yeah, this is what I normally use. And I thought you all would cringe at that because I'm not a dark mode guy at all. As you can see from my VS Code, I'm not a dark mode user. But no, you can't really control much. Those would be settings you'd have to have per terminal. Yeah, some of the other ones, like I said, this isn't the only one out there. And I will tell you, Spectre.Console was actually based on a Python library. So if you do Python work, there's a library out there that's very similar to do the same kinds of things, which is kind of neat. But I'm sure there are other ones out there that might be able to kind of fit the need that you have. Anything else?
So I have a question along the lines of fonts and styles. Is there a way that you could put styles into a separate file similar to like a cascading style sheet?
You still have to read them and apply them. So I don't think there's a good way where you could say, let me see if I can find through this one. So I don't think there's a way that you could pull this out, right, this white on blue, and have it be called, standard style, right? Like you could do that, and you probably could use string interpolation at that point to kind of inject that stuff in yourself. But I don't think there's any mechanism in Spectre itself to kind of globalize common styles.
Gotcha. Okay. Anyone else have any questions for Mike or comments?
It was a great presentation. Really well done. That's really impressive. Thank you.
Thank you so
Agreed.
much.
Oh, good.
Thank you. This was my first technical presentation in many, many years. I normally do soft skills talks, and when Sam asked me to come speak, I sent him a list, and they were all soft except this one, and he said this one, and I'm like, okay. So, I'm glad the demo guides were kind, and I do appreciate those comments. Thank you.
Oh, it worked out very well. Thanks, Mike. Highly appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
Before we adjourn for the evening, I just have a couple concluding slides that I'd like to go over. So if you'll allow me, let me reshare my screen again. So if you glance over into the chat window, you'll see that there's a variety of different links that are posted, and we'll go through those. So as far as resources go, the recording of this presentation will be edited and uploaded to YouTube in just a couple days, and you have the link available in the chat. I strongly advise you to subscribe to the channel to get upload notifications. In addition, tech events, which we'll cover in just a little bit, are also going to be posted on my blog, and you can also subscribe to that for updates. More importantly, the feedback eval. The link for that is also in chat. If you would please take a moment, fill it out, so we can provide Mike with some constructive criticism. Again, for those that joined us after the start of the meeting, we have a special offer from Manning.com, 35% off a selection of books, with the link and the discount code posted in chat. With regards to technical events, this is for both the end of October as well as beginning of November and trickling into December. So as far as user groups, the Greater Lansing user group for .NET is going to be meeting on November 1st. That is an out-of-band meeting because of the holidays. And Sarah Dukevich, also known as Saduki, will be presenting at that meeting. On November 8th is the Azure Cleveland user group, and that meets on the second Wednesday of every month. And then on November 20th and 30th, we're going to have two meetings of the Cleveland C# group in November. So we're going to have John Skeet presenting on November 20th, and then on November 30th, Jeff Fritz will be presenting on .NET 8. So please mark your calendars for both of those dates, and the meetup site will be updated shortly. With regards to conferences, October 27th, tomorrow, is the Cybersecurity Summit in Columbus. You have a discount code available from the AITP group, AITP23 Akron, that will get you into the conference free of charge. In addition, October 31st through November 2nd is API World, and that is an online conference. And I posted a blog with the discount code so that way you can attend free of charge online. On November 7th through the 10th in the Pennsylvania Poconos is Tech Bash. Unfortunately, that is a paid-for conference, and I don't have a discount code for that. But if you're interested, the link is available on my blog. November 8th through the 9th is GitHub Universe, and November 14th through the 16th is .NET Conf, where they will be announcing the release of .NET 8. And then going into December, if you're interested in AI, there's the Global AI Conference 2023, and that's going to be an all-day, literally 24 hours of AI topics from presenters all over the world. That is free of charge and available online. So all those links will be posted on my blog. And another thing that we always like to cover are job openings. So you can find a variety of openings at techsystems.com/IT-jobs. But we also like to ask who's hiring and who's looking. And as Mike mentioned earlier, improving is always looking. If anyone else has any job openings, feel free to jump in, either verbally or in chat. And likewise, if you're looking to change your place of employment, you can also make yourself known, or feel free to reach out to me afterwards. And my contact information, you can reach me at snasser@nistechnologies.com, on Twitter or X at Sam Nasser, my blogspot, or my blog once again on Blogspot. And lastly, if we're not connected on LinkedIn, I invite you to do so. And so with that, thanks again for Mike. Thanks again to Mike for a great presentation. Thank you all for attending, and look forward to seeing you all next month. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Sam.